And good afternoon, good evening, good morning to wherever you are watching from. And welcome to the Zachalou and Denise Guru Show. And today we have Stephen Popiotek. And he is a very, very interesting fellow. And he's got such a broad range of knowledge and work that he does. He does grid work with Gaia. He's got a connection to Merlin and Avalon. He's a metaphysical teacher, healer, cosmic shaman. He works with light beings, interdimensional beings, out to the galaxies, the universes, anything inner Earth. So, and he's, God, you've traveled all over, haven't you, too?
Definitely. Physically and metaphysically.
Yeah, there you go. So it's going to be a really interesting show today, and we can keep him for hours and hours. So when he gets tired, he can just tell us when he's done. So we're in Colorado, so we can really light up.
That's so funny. I'm a little less green and more traditional.
Okay. Well, welcome, Stephen, and we're so happy to have you here.
Likewise, thank you.
And somebody who found me on my website directed me to you, and I got to really get into some of the stuff, a lot of your works through YouTube and a lot of conferences that you were attending. So, I mean, there's just so many places we could go. I mean, where do you want to start? Where would you like to start?
I guess to ground it, if you wanted to discuss a few of the questions you said you had already there, or maybe if you want to see if
Sure.
throw that out to me, and I could feel it out to see if it's relevant to start with it, or
Sure.
weave it into the bigger discussion.
Okay. Well,
or a little background on myself, maybe. I don't know if you want me to discuss a little bit more of my work.
Well, if you want to share a little bit more about yourself, that might be a good way to start.
Sure, a little grounding point for those who have no idea who I am.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm 46 years old now. I started meditating when I was 16, so it's been quite a long time. I had a really young awakening in terms of working with the Kundalini energies and having first contact with different guides, angels, as well as on the dark side as well. I've had a lot of early confrontations with the lesser than light side of beings. I mean, originally was a physics major at NYU before I decided to go more on the spiritual shamanic path. But I still like to integrate over all the many years, more of the science background, because for me, magic and mysticism and higher science are supposed to connect. There is a higher logic as well, which is integrally connected to working with magic and higher mysticism. And especially as a Gemini, I like to balance both sides of my brain and my male female to, feed the poetic and the artistic side as well as the logical and concrete scientific side. So and a lot of the work I do, it kind of reflects a synergy of that process, where I work a lot with different techniques, different guided meditations that I do with people individually and in groups that are pretty much like channeled in the moment, but at the same time, they work on a certain set of principles that I've been developing over the years that I now call cosmic shamanism. Originally came more from a Kabbalistic background and like Egyptian mysticism background were two of my earlier cornerstones that I then kind of launched from. And so diving into some of the realms of like the mythic and the archetypes has always been a fascinating lore to me. Just, both on a feeling level and also on a contemplative level, so some of your work that you're doing with your writing, I'm sure would be, tied into that very, very nicely in our discussion, because it is about trying to journey through the realm of symbols and being able to access symbols as a language that helps us interface with the divine and with other beings who are also working with variations of those symbols as a kind of linguistic bond, from their realm to our realm. So for me, that's always a very important part of my work is the visualizations, the symbols, the archetypes, the geometries, the colors, the sound. It's really part of my journey about wanting to immerse myself. And so I find that you can weave a journey through that with people individually and collectively, and you can really gain some incredible access to realms of knowledge that you might have not thought about before. And I also have a whole other conspiracy side of my storyline that your viewers can watch some other videos of mine on YouTube that go more into that area of harassment that I had received from many different groups, including from the National Security Agency and some other ones over the years. Because all of these agencies have covert divisions that are involved in that work with psychics, that are involved with technologies that are designed to manipulate people's consciousness and awareness and emotional states. And so I kind of dove into an area there from my earlier work that continues up to this day. So that becomes like a sidetrack of maybe some content we can explore later if it's relevant. But maybe discussing some of the darker side of what's happening in terms of the challenges to our timelines. That might be a little bit of a woven a place where we can weave that discussion.
Well, we talk a lot about, what's going on with Gaia and through all of this right now, because both Zach and I feel that Gaia is like the ticket to all this Ascension stuff. And I think a lot of us are here to help her, to help her balance out. And I don't know, for me, I don't think it's not so much as humanity as I'm here for Gaia. And yeah, and humanity, if they get helped, it's like a spillover to them.
Nice. I understand that.
Yeah. So
would that be like a contact buzz? Is that what you're talking about?
Nice. I like that. Etheric contact buzz. Yeah.
Okay. You made me lose my train of thought here. So anyway, grid keeping, and you do a lot of grid work with Gaia, and you're just really earthy, this earthy and the cultural work. Where do you see, I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, well, what does Gaia have to do with all of this? Really, because a lot of people forget about her, so what do you think she has to do with all of this?
Wow. I mean, it's everything pretty much. as you said, it's like the cornerstone of, it's so sad to see how we as a collective have so fallen short of our responsibility of being stewards of the very consciousness that helped birth our bodies, and that we've, really created that separation between us and the living side of the planet, that has created the environment for us to even have this discussion, and just to treat it from a mechanistic point of view of, massive chemicals and elements and weather patterns without thinking that it's alive is beyond stupidity to me, and just a really super arrogant, side of people that are just stuck in their heads and not in their bodies or even feeling, any connection to the earth, and of course, there's been so much in our society geared towards, in religion and politics and economics, being designed to segregate the population from really rooting into what the native traditions have been about and what the ancient elders have known all about to begin with, and keep them locked into more of a concrete, city grid with all the microwave towers and power lines and, piping underground that creates a distortion of the telluric energies or the ley line energies from coming up more naturally. So you have this matrix that's created around, especially all the major cities, that, is like caging the bird. It's like caging our phoenix potential to really resurrect in a new way, in our capacity. So it does require work, and discipline to be able to cut through the static of all the noise, especially if you're empathic or a little bit psychic or feeling sensitive to energies around you. Living in a city, especially, this take effort to cut through that and be able to make a commitment to reground into a level that's beyond that turbulence, to get into the deeper inner earth realms, or the core of the earth, is always something I use in every meditation. I always begin with that. We always connect to I always call in the archangels of the different directions, the 4 directions and above and below. And it's, we start simply, because it's, from a shamanic point of view, you have to start with, it's like feng shui. You start with honoring your basic directions that deal with the elements, because the elements are an extension of the earth, of the planetary consciousness, right, that has birthed us. So they're part of that pentagram, part of that 5-pointed star of like Gaia, of Mother Earth, and so checking in with her is essential, because if you notice all the wild weather patterns and things that are going on the planet this time, of course, some of it is having to do with technology manipulations that the various governments have with weather engineering. But there's a lot of it that's happening, due to shifts that Mother Earth is going through and due to new energies that are coming into the planet from different galactic regions, as well as a large gas cloud, a plasma cloud our solar system is going into. So there are larger like weather patterns, you know, and the way that the system of propaganda, the media and everything has trained us to try to become more isolationist, to be more, you know, segregated in our local neighborhood, to think that we're alone in our planet and that there's not life out there. Although there is a bigger movement for disclosure that is happening to give us more of an idea of the fact that there is higher life and extraterrestrials, and that we've had active engagement with many races over many years in our shadow government groups and individuals too. But that's kind of like, for me, like putting a lens shamanically into like upper world and then viewing like what's going on in upper world, where you can start to connect to the star nations, more of our higher families, and then putting the lens, you know, in middle world and underworld to see what's going on underground, what's going on beneath our feet, both in the earth as well as in the depths of our subconscious, right? Because it is all holographic. You know, we're made of the stuff of the earth and the stars combined, right? We're a bridge between above and below. And that we forgot that there's such a power we can harness if we open our hearts to being stewards and way showers of what is possible when we are that bridge from above and below, and to give birth to something new in between, which is the new reality of the ascended energy of the heart chakra that we're talking about. So part of the analysis is going deep down and seeing, all right, what's happening inside the earth that we can assist her and making more room for that love energy to flow upward. So much of the work I've been doing over the past several years, I mean, going to different countries as well as here locally, because it's not just about physical travel. Physical travel is nice and it's powerful to connect to like sacred sites, you know, and you can get a different angle of what's happening, like, you know, with the body of the earth. And so when I went to England, past couple of years, a few times to do work and more in northern England and in the southeast and different stone circles, different ley lines. It was very powerful to start to connect to, you know, the history there as well as the challenges. So everywhere I would travel to, we'd always, you know, tap into just like a healer. Okay, where's the block in the land? Like you would tap into someone's body. Where's the block of the chi energy? How can we help alleviate that blockage? Is it karmic? Is it trauma-based? You know, is it technology-based? You know, is it coming from past life? You know, is it an empathic limitation? You know, the land absorbed for people, you know, as a loving mother would do for the child, you know? So, and how can we create more space to, you know, ameliorate that, clean it out so that we can allow this pure potential to rise up that has been previously more suppressed. And so a lot of the work we've been doing is geared towards creating more space for the new energy lines that are coming out of the core of the earth. There are new vortexes that are forming. It's like her heart is expanding, but literally it's like the quantum level of Gaia's magnetic field has been shifting for a number of years. And this is tied into her physical core. And so, you know, we can assign different metaphysical qualities to physical forces because there's not this distinction, you know, in the realm of the oneness. Physical forces are a medium through which other energies can be conveyed to us, just like we use right now this technology or using microwaves for a cell phone, you know, to communicate. Well, nature's found a way to do that far longer than we have, you know, and so we kind of become arrogant with our technology and forget that there is a deeper level of communication that exists across vast, you know, sizes of reality, you know, from the tiniest kingdom to the biggest kingdom. And that we forgot, like the Avatar movie, to plug ourselves back in, you know, to that love matrix that connects all together. And when you start doing that, you get into some really interesting areas. You can go more and more, but I figure like I go back to you for a minute. I mean, I can continue in that discussion, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to guide it to another area or not. If something is rising in your mind as I'm discussing this.
Zach, you got anything, or do you want to let him continue?
Yeah, well, I wanted you to go ahead and ask some of your questions. I know you guys have been talking a little bit, and so I maybe pick up from there, and then I'll follow along.
Sure. And even some of the things we were talking about before we get into some of the terms of questions that we talked about on Facebook, you mean, or something you had more specific in there?
Probably what we were talking about on Facebook.
Sure.
You know, I don't know, how deep do you want to go? I know we were getting the subject of dragons and
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I mean, sure. Okay, I'll start doing a little bit of like a weave, because it's also important people understand like things that are going on now, like with our timeline and with our reality that we can help shift, as well as viewing it through a lens of history and how things have happened before, that we're dealing with repercussions, of some of the things that were set in motion, because we have such a collective ADD in our society of like, of like information, overload in our internet society and our media, and so much propaganda that, people can get very easily lose sight of what, of our history, and revisionist history is oftentimes co-opted real history, which made it harder for us to understand, where we're going, because there's been so much manipulation about where we've been, and not just physically or economically or society-wise, but metaphysically, energetically. And so, it's nice to kind of clarify some of the things that have been hidden from us so we can understand that those pockets of historical time periods are still available for us to access. And that it's not just looking at the idea of time as something that's like just gone by and we should forget about and just focus on the future or be present now, but that it's, it's not so linear. It's more non-linear. It's more cyclical, more spiral. So there are different periods of time that affect other periods of time. And the more you raise your consciousness, the more you start to step out of that box of just thinking it's, this linear corridor that we're going through, and realize that we can plug in, through this eternal now idea. But what they don't really advertise when they say about the eternal now is that it's not just the now that's devoid of the past or future. It's like a tree that digs its roots deeper into the ground. In this case, the idea that it's a ground that represents time, a field of time. So, and the roots spread out. So there's different roots of this tree of life go out to connect to all different time periods. So the more you're really present in the true eternal now, the more you have access to a larger wheel of time. And so it's like the spokes of the wheel, or like the roots of that tree. And that oftentimes we forgot because we get stuck in just being in our 9-to-5 mindset, or in our adrenal gland, or fixation or habit, of externalizing our impulses of experiencing life. We get caught in that spin of like too much being in the beta waves, or in the brainwave states where we're not so relaxed. We're not able to really tune into the lower brainwave states that help us calibrate, right, to the electromagnetic field of the earth, to that Schumann resonance, that's about 8 hertz, 7.83 hertz, and has harmonics to it. The Gaia already has this network, through her extremely low frequency, through that bandwidth of electromagnetic waves that permeates around her body, from the lightning bolts, from her electrical fields, that we're constantly immersed in this bath, of energy that we've just kind of disconnected from. And then we start to realize that half the work is about deconstructing our blockages so that we can begin to kind of clean our antenna system and be able to pick up on transmissions that are quite physical, and also some of them are letting go into more multidimensional. But it starts with the physical. If your body's not, properly healthy and grounded and rested and charged up with some minerals, and then it's harder to kind of feel the energies. So you start with basics, like your root chakra, like grounding a lightning rod into the earth. You want to make sure that you're present here, and then you can expand your branches, like the well-grounded tree, and start to pick up on other, other reality stations that are playing other than those on your iPhone.
Hey, Stephen, so you mentioned Schumann, and there's been talk of that lately with it changing its frequency, or its resonance is increased or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Do we know where that energy comes from, really? Where is the source? What is generating the Schumann resonance? Do you know?
Well, part of it, traditionally has been due to the electrical energy coming from the earth. Sorry, my phone was going off in the background. I forgot to turn my phone ringer off. It'll be off in a second. There is lightning bolts that are going on at different points around the earth all the time. So there's a certain field of electrical conductivity that's created from the atmosphere, and from the ground level to the upper atmosphere, the ionosphere, where we have the level of the atmosphere where there's more plasma, which is all conductive to electricity. And so just like a kind of a capacitor, right, where you have two conductive plates and insulator, two insulators and a conductive plate, you have this ability of the frequencies to flow, but kind of like an organ pipe, where you have a certain pitch of music, which will be dependent upon the radius and like length of the tube. It'll be a wave guide, right, for certain wavelength of energy. So the Earth and any planet, you know, based upon its physical parameters of its diameter, its volume, it's going to be more conducive to certain wavelengths of energy that are just naturally flowing within it, because it has that, you know, it's like almost like a hollow cavity. I mean, even though the Earth isn't hollow, it's more honeycombed. But this electrical energy between the lightning bolts and the electrical field between the surface of the Earth and the upper atmosphere, it creates a resonance, and that resonance is what they refer to as a Schumann. And yeah, because the magnetic field is decreasing very quickly, has been decreasing a lot over the past, you know, decades compared to previous times. So it's like the magnetic field is decreasing and the electrical field is increasing. You can almost think about it astrologically too. Like, I like to see everything in, you know, again, like a bridge from symbols to science. Like Saturn, which rules Capricorn, Earth energy, rules magnetism. Our karma, our teacher, our lessons. Uranus, which is the ruler of the age of Aquarius, the new age we're going into, rules electricity, Kundalini. So it's like we're shifting ages to go more into, literally going into the age of Aquarius means that our electrical system is getting rebooted, is getting stimulated, is getting rewired.
So does that mean Uranus is the source of this electricity?
Oh, no. I'm just saying that's just more of a esoteric kind of influence, you know, and an energetic influence of looking at astrologically. I mean, the actual literal electrical energy in the Earth, because as her magnetic field is shifting, there's changes going on in the sun that's affecting the Earth. There are changes happening in our local sector of the galaxy. In other words, as our solar system is moving around the galaxy, around the galactic center, you know, in our orbit, it's going through a large interstellar dust cloud, the scientists call it, right? So it's more like a plasma cloud. And certain parts of this dust cloud are more dense. And it's funny because some of the stuff you'll find in mainstream media, and then all of a sudden it's like gone. You know, so I've been following different astronomical, you know, kind of events going on for many, many years. And so I always keep an eye out to see, like, what'll come out one year and all of a sudden you never hear about it again. You know, or like 10 years later, another scientist says it as if they just discovered it, but it was talked about, you know, 10 years before. So back in the 90s, there were a woman named Priscilla Frisch, University of Chicago. She came out with some wonderful papers in astronomy magazines talking about this local interstellar dust cloud, or local bubble, they call it. Then there were wonderful other scientists in Russia much later that were talking a lot about it, that David Wilcox was giving some press about in some of his books, and I had discovered them before. But the idea is that this gas cloud influences every planet. It helps to restructure the magnetic field. It affects us on many different levels. On a spiritual level, it's part of our catalyst for our evolution. So it's literally like it interacts with the sun, and every planet it goes through it creates an interaction. And so that kind of friction, or that stimulus, affects us. So this is all about Gaia's Kundalini. So it's not just global warming that we're hearing about, you know, from too much pollution, which of course I'm against that, but people are getting too caught up in like the left versus the right political movements whenever it comes to different things, and they're missing the bigger picture, that there's this fundamental change happening on the planet that's beyond any of our influence. But we do influence it, but at the same time, it's beyond us, because it's the consciousness of Earth that is choosing to shift. And as it shifts, it's going to change the body. It's changing the school. So some of the earthquakes that happen are literally about Mother Earth making more room so that she can clear out some of the karma, some of the energy that's blocking her love, her light, from coming out from the center of her body out to the surface. And this is a big part of what we're going through now until 2019. Is that this new energy, which is tied into the Schumann resonance too, because it's like more for, same way physically, if we raise our Kundalini, if we work with our chi energy, our sexual energy, and we feel more of that going up our spine into our chakras, this is tied into a different type of electrical energy that normal scientists don't like to acknowledge exists, but is discussed a lot in the covert community. And it gets into what they call longitudinal waves or scalar fields. And it's a different type of electromagnetic wave that our bodies produce and that exists in nature. And that consciousness kind of works within that field. So, you know, I kind of go on many tangents with it, but the basic idea is that as her vibrations, as her harmonics are getting higher, her electrical field is getting higher, it's stimulating our own brainwave states to also go higher. It's like retuning your guitar string. It's retuning our nervous system to respond to a new station of reality that we can then tap into, because now we have an expanded reach, you know, to access it, to download it.
You know, a lot of people, Stephen, are talking. It's kind of weird because we talk about this spiritual warfare and this false light and all this stuff that's going on to try to stop all of this ascension thing process that's going on. And I've been hearing a lot of healers and are saying that the Kundalini is part of the reptilian control system, and the chakra system is part of the reptilian control system. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the second part I heard before. I heard that from other people before. The first part I never heard, though. So there are actually people going that far to say that the Kundalini is part of the reptilian. Wow, I'm pretty. Few things leave me speechless as a double Gemini.
I'm a Gemini too.
I had a feeling you might be. Are you May or June? What are you?
June 1st.
Okay, May 25th.
Okay.
Side note. Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's funny because it's all the years of research I've done and experience of my own, you know, dramas and working with clients and meeting different people, you know, from covert scientists to people that have been in secret societies. I mean, Illuminati bloodlines, different intelligence agency people that I've known. I mean, I've had a pretty crazy network of connections over my life so far, you know, that have kind of confirmed a lot of things I've tapped into on a higher level. But it's always funny to see where the new propaganda of how they use fear to take us away from sources of power that are inherently divine, inherently pure. Think about the Vatican distortion of paganism, of, you know, cursing the earth and contaminating the symbol of the pentagram, you know, where understanding that, of course, every symbol can be used or misused. It just depends on the intention of the user, all right, and what energy is being put into it. So to say that, because those two comments you mentioned are obviously linked up together. Chakras are part of the Kundalini. The energy that flows through your chakras is tied into your Kundalini, or vice versa. The Kundalini is tied into your cerebral spinal fluid. And to the crystal components that make up our spinal fluid act as conductors for this chi energy, for this life force energy, or orgone energy. Many different terms people have given over the years, different discoverers. So to say that the Kundalini energy and the chakra energy is something negative is really equivalent to saying that, you know, all chi energy is evil or made by negative ETs. You're literally saying that life force energy is evil. Like, that's insanity. And it's literally saying that all your sexual energy, talk about trying to run a guilt, the same way that the religions have tried to make us guilty for enjoying our sexuality, yet alone making our sexuality a kind of tantric catapult to spirituality. To introduce this to like new age community that are normally more open, to say that your Kundalini or chakras is, you know, is artificial like that, or designed by like the matrix groups, you know, the reptilians, is a total co-option, you know, of your own ability to be set free from them. So in other words, it's like they're like swapping the idea. It's like 1984, where they want to, like, you know, switch the terminologies, you know, with the book, and like where you have like the double speak, right? You know, where freedom means control, right? You know, things like that. So I would say that's absolute it's absolute BS for sure. You know, that's the important faculty for us to liberate ourselves, understand that we are rainbow beings, which means that we are divided into octaves of expression of light and sound and energy that is crystallized into form. And the chakras are direct connections to the endocrine glands. So you might as well say that your endocrine glands are made by the devil. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, it's like so ridiculous, you know. Or and you know, these are the centers that produce hormones that affect our consciousness. So, and here's an interesting point to kind of go from with that. It seems like people that are talking about that are taking a seed of truth, the idea that these parts of our body can be manipulated, and they're running with it, and they're extrapolating to such a level that is beyond, you know, logical. And because, of course, many beings and government agencies, when they've done different mind control practices, or like from the Montauk Project, where they, you know, did work on trying to program children that were receiving sexual abuse, basically, from their handlers. But they found that they, like from Preston Nichols, Duncan Cameron, some of the people that they're part of the Montauk Project. I'm actually friends with both of them, and you know, they were involved in some pretty heavy stuff, but they were under mind control themselves when they were doing these activities. But they part of their practice was about getting the kids up to the point of pre-orgasm and then trying to program them, with shock and trauma, because they realize that when you're in that orgasmic state or pre-orgasmic state, your subconscious opens up more. So you're able to connect more to the universe. At the same time, if you're not careful, right, you can be more programmed. If you're in a negative situation like that, being friggin' traumatized, or if you're, involved in like dark sex magic or something, and other entities try to come in to take advantage of your energy field, or the ones you're making deals with, the sexual power and the Kundalini are two sides of the same coin. The sexual energy is one expression of the Kundalini. So this is our inherent connection to Gaia, of really plugging into her grid. It's like Gaia wants to be more in this constant orgasmic state to give us a new birth. She doesn't want to be in this pain. So to deny our own Kundalini and our chakras is the same thing of like, denying the fact that we're sexual spiritual beings and that the earth is the same thing and the creator is the same thing. If we keep that divide going, we're not only not healthy, we're not happy, and then we're cut off from our true power. And that really is what makes the reptilians and other groups win, is if we're deplugging from the very source of liberation that can help defeat them. So how clever it is for people to try to spread this propaganda, maybe out of some of them well-meaningly, because they may have experienced trauma themselves, or they may have been deceived by the false light or other negative technologies or beings. But it's kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You don't throw away all geometry because you don't stop using all electricity because some idiots are misusing electricity. So I would say that's a way to simplify the answer.
Well, and it goes right along with women's mysteries, and the menstruation, the women, and the giving back to Gaia of the menstruation blood, and how they've turned that into such a dark, I had my curse this month, I got my curse. And it's just more ways for them to take all our power away from us.
Pretty much, and especially because they try to get more clever, because as we get more sophisticated in some of our paradigms and methodologies of systems of philosophy, so they then still have to try to infiltrate, right, those new paradigms with some disinformation to keep people locked in, so that they're not able to utilize the fullness of the very system they're trying to talk about. It's like putting malware in your computer, putting malware in like the discourse. So people are coming out of more fear instead of heart-centered point of view. And all that does is keep feeding the very nature of the beast that we're trying to liberate ourselves from. And because, I've also got caught slack from certain people because, part of the work I do is a lot about spiritual warrior work. We work on transmuting, bringing like the heart and will together to try to help, liberate people and as well as the earth from some of these negative forces that have tried to, gone overboard with blocking or clogging up some of the ley lines or vortexes to try to manipulate people more easily, and there's also, I see that same schism within the other side of the spectrum of the spiritual movement. Has been about a lot of people that were too afraid to want to even go into the discussion about the dark side or the shadow side of what's happening, many times because, they've taken the idea of like, the secret, or a certain other self-help books, about you creating your own reality. And they've taken it so far out of context and so far out of balance that it's become more of an egotistical, self-aggrandizement process of just like, oh, I'm making my own reality. I shouldn't care about anybody else's reality or the collective, But at the same time, they're the ones talking about service and being sustainable. So it's this weird split, like a cognitive like dissonance I see with a lot of people that are going on like that, where, you start to like say anything that's in opposition or fear-based, they like close down or they don't want to go into it because they're like, oh, you're just making it stronger, you're attracting it. I'm like, no, it's already here. We need to get rid of it. I'm like, you don't shoot a journalist because they're talking about, people about human trafficking, right? No, you actually go there and save the children, right? You don't start a discussion like, oh no, we can't focus on those kids because, that's going to make it worse. It's like, no, you idiot. You actually go in there, you change policy, so we need to have a discussion so we can have a solution, and if we only have censorship, it becomes like spiritual censorship, in a way, that's happening. And even across our field of communication and the media, with our modern society of politics and, you see that spilling over with like, with the so-called snowflake generation, right? Where like every little thing, you have to be careful what you're saying. It's like the PC crowd, the PC police have infested our communities. So even you can't even tell a joke without offending somebody, You see how they've tried to like co-opt, even like our star seeds or the younger generation that's more psychic, potentially more psychic in their hardware and their more openness to see beyond, the limitations of capitalism in our society. But they've created such a condition of, harboring ill feelings almost in a sense about, where we are overly, inspecting every little word and every little thing and critiquing it in a way that's so out of proportion, with over-identifying with a race or a gender or an ism, where we've created so much more of a divide. And that divide is, reflected in the earth, reflected in different levels of society. And so it's a brilliant way to keep people caught up in their own bullshit so that we're not able to really join together and harness our collective Aquarian power to make the new society. And people are bickering over each other because they haven't risen their consciousness, beyond the level of like, having, racism in their heart or gender inequality or, all these different, but, there's a fine line, because when people realize that we have reincarnation and that we've been all these different cultures, we've been all these different nationalities, we've been all these different religions, then all those prejudices kind of fall to the side, because it's ignorance at the most fundamental level, that if we're in a heart chakra, we understand that we are all one, right? And at the same time, because there is a schism and you have groups on a negative side that are trying to divide and conquer and maintain their dominion, over our society, over our planet, we do have to be a little more proactive with our intentions, with our love and our will, to help heal and exercise those negative influences, from our bodies, from our planets. Like, we're the stewards, so we have to get back into gear with our magical staffs, and our wands and our swords, and start cutting up some of the negative structures that are there, and not just being like, oh, I can't look at that,
That's a great segue. You said something a while ago that caught my attention: matrix groups. Okay, and so maybe you could call those controllers, or but matrix groups. So that is implying that this is a matrix, and then therefore this is a virtual reality. Would that be a proper connection to make?
No, I'm not going that far. I would say that in terms of the holographic aspect, I would say, yeah, the universe, even at energetic level, scientific level, is holographic, but it's not a virtual reality hologram. Like, it's holographic in terms of scientific principles, like the part reflects the whole, and that there's fractal aspect to, like, electromagnetic waves and how things on one size scale affect other things on different size scales. More as a kind of law of the universe of vibration and correspondence. I would say that that certain groups, certain extraterrestrial groups and certain shadow government groups have had technologies where they've tried to work against that principle. In other words, like, create a false overlay to what is real, in order to try to subjugate people or keep us in a box energetically, electromagnetically, and different more exotic technologies are being applied to try to, what's the word, to basically cap our perception, so that we're not able to see beyond the veil of our three-dimensional reality as easily as we should be by now. So it's basically an artificial veil that has been created around the planet, certain areas more so than others, through technology from both certain human groups and certain extraterrestrial groups, that have been designed that some people are confusing that with the discourse of mixing it up by thinking that our reality is just a computer simulation. Now, yeah. At the same token, there is one of the negative ET groups that we are dealing with is an advanced alien artificial intelligence group. And their wet dream would be to create something like that for our society, where we are plugged into that type of situation that we forgot what is real and what's not real. But that is not what's happening on this planet. There have been other places that they have done that to, where people are plugged in, like the Matrix movie style, into a actual system. Part of the work I do with clients individually is the cosmic shamanism work. I do a lot of advanced journeying work with them to help them, soul retrieval, help them recover energies that might be displaced from other lifetimes and other places, not just on this planet, but other planets. And I worked with a few people that have had some really crazy stuff with the AI systems going on otherworldly level. And one of them was getting harassed so much in this lifetime by the AI system, and I worked with them, and we tracked it back to actually a planet that's, it's actually in the, I can't remember now if it's in the large or small, but it's in one of the smaller dwarf galaxies that orbits the Milky Way. Is basically one of their footholds it was one of their footholds that they first came in on, that they were launching some of their influences into the Milky Way through there. But anyway, point is that when we were journeying and trying to recover soul pieces, he was in a situation that reminded me of the Matrix movie, where he was plugged in to like a kind of like virtual reality machine that was working off his own fears to try to think of like holodeck on Star Trek, except they would try to create different situations like a complex video game where a part of his soul was stuck in it, and to keep playing this like scenario where he was having to go through certain obstacles, but they were using his own talents against him by creating more complex challenges, you know. So we had to
so do you then, this right here, here's a piece of quartz I got hiking.
Oh, nice.
And this to you, or what you're saying, this is real. This matter is real in this realm. This isn't a virtual illusion. This is actually really here. Yeah,
I would say yes. I would say for sure. And that, you know, it can get more confusing and more advanced because like I've also worked a lot with different people that have had military abductions or different people that are being used in projects. So from working with them and my own experience with some of that earlier on, which I go into in some of the videos, I've also learned a lot about some of the different projects that are going on from those groups that are trying to manipulate consciousness. I mean, so much of the programs are about, basically, as she started talking about, that they've been trying to manipulate or slow down the ascension process because they want to buy more time for their matrix. In other words, for the matrix in a sense is more of both energetic and psychological, emotional. You know, it runs on different levels. Basically, it's part of the system that makes up our 3D reality on a lower level versus what it could be if it's freed. You know, it's the difference between, if you know, it's like trapping a bird inside a cage. You know, but they make it look prettier. You know, so people don't realize they're in cages. But literally, you know, hijacking the cell phone towers, these intelligence agencies using different frequency technologies from satellite systems, from transmitters like HARP, from even and just from the complex network of cell phone transmitters. There are different frequencies that are pumped in overseas that creates a grid. It's a literal like microwave grid, right, of all those intersecting frequency fields. So if they're pulsing them in certain ways and they combine it with other things, it literally creates a background static, a background noise, right, that influences our ability in a similar manner to like that cage with a bird. So it creates a space where it blocks part of our ability to like think outside the box or experience higher degrees of freedom, whether it's through our imagination, through emotionally feeling, through psychic experiences. So we have to cut through this turbulence. So like doing meditations where in the sun, where you really be able to ground the light of the sun into your chakras in your body, really connecting to the Earth Mother, all the way down to the core. For me, is essential to begin to like redefine our relationship to like dimensions. Because so much of this technology is being designed to create like a kind of, it's not even like a cage, it's almost like a dimensionally collapsed in, space, so that we're like stuck in 2D, not even realizing we're even 3D, let alone 4D. It's like
what you're describing to me is kind of like maybe auric implants, or mind control technologies, things like that.
Sure. Absolutely, they definitely both go into that. Some of the implants I've worked on with people to help them remove, have been really designed to hijack some of the chakra energies or their DNA in a way that would make them more controllable and less able to access the new strands of the DNA that are opening up. That's part of the reason why they're doing the chemtrails. Is a big part of why they're doing the chemtrails, is to create the chemical screen for the matrix system, so that we're breathing in certain heavy metals, certain nanobot technologies in some of the sprays that are literally designed to clog up our nervous system and our higher neural centers, so that we're like sluggish antennas. We're not able to pick up on the refined transmissions because we have this heavier material that's literally making it harder for us to compute and to connect an electrical level between parts of the body. And so we need to really detoxify ourselves from these heavy metals. Like, it's very important to clear out your system so you're able to have more conductivity. I even found papers online. There's a wonderful site that Pentagon has called DTIC, DTIC, DTIC.mil. It stands for the Defense Technical Information Center. it's basically like the Pentagon's main, like, you know, they're like Google equivalent of their archives of research material, all scientific papers and things like that. And they have a classified division that you can't access, obviously, unless you have the clearance. And then there's the public, you know, sector of the database you can access. It's just like a search engine. You type in a word and they'll give you all the different papers that are written about that topic. But anyway, people, I always tell people to look at that site just to look up things, because they can, once in a while, they'll spill out certain secrets or certain information that comes out on that website, you know, of different research projects the government's funded, you know, that are interesting. You know, that kind of confirms some of these more, you know, crazier claims that some people may sound like, you know, we're talking, you know, may not exactly see our eye to eye with our discussion. But I found papers on there about nanotechnology where they specifically talk about these nanobots, because I started seeing this a few years ago, and some clients are coming up, and I started having them in my dreams, and I was starting to feel them coming out my aura and like going out of body and pulling them out of my field. And out of clients' fields, these like nanobots and they were coming in through the chemtrails as part of the nanotechnology, and they were kind of like, you know, burrowing in people's fields, like really nasty shit, you know. And we have the power to deactivate them and like clean them out, but we have to realize that, you know, that these organizations have gone really far in their attempt to maintain their control system, and that it's up to us to really learn that we are co-creators on so many more levels than we've even imagined, and that there's so many beautiful beings that want to help us awaken to the fact that we are co-creators and help the earth as well. So, and that, just to complete that thought of the nanobots, there was one paper I found, which I can send a link to you guys later about it, on that website. It was about nanotechnology, and they literally talk about releasing nanobots through aerial dispersion to assess people's DNA and to burrow into the brain and self-explode when need be. That was like, wow, that was like written like back in the early 2000s, you know, that was one of the goals of the military nanotechnology project, was to do that, and also create an intelligent swarm where they said, imagine linking up billions of these nanobots, different locations all around different areas geographically, to create a new kind of virtual mind, a virtual intelligence that people can upload into and connect to as a new kind of as a new kind of collective consciousness. Talk about AI shit. Like, that's a whole different level of, like, you know, like an AI wet dream.
That ancestry.com part of that, I mean, you see that where they, get your DNA, you know, it's like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm. So funny. And that's the thing. It's so important that in the middle of all the heavy discussion, you really have to keep your heart and your joy and levity about you, because so much of these topics, you know, some people go into to get, you know, all the stuff I see and all the psychic attacks and the physical pain I've had from my dramas, like, wow, like it would have floored a lot of people by this point. So, but the heart energy is the most important thing, because that's really what they're trying to cap and suppress from us. So we can't make them win by giving away the very thing that is most precious, you know, and that through that lens of the heart, you can then investigate so many of these other beautiful realms of mythos and other beings that have resided with us physically or on the spirit realm, you know, through that heart lens, you know, and it provides more of a safety valve for you to understand their motivation, you know. And I think that's maybe a nice segue to go a little bit into more of the dragon talk, if you want. You know? Want to switch?
I'm still on the Gaia thing.
Sure.
How do you think, you know, with all of this technology and them trying to stop her evolution? I had a friend who called me one day, and she has cousin that works for NASA, and they got pictures of Gaia splitting. So they got the two, and it was just freaking them out. Yeah, because they're actually being able to see it happen. But
splitting, like in terms of like her energy or physically?
Like it's like her etheric self is pulling away from the dense self, and they got pictures of that. So they're really freaking out. So it tells you more about NASA.
Yes.
But, you know, does she have a way of fighting back? I mean, or is she just going to go regardless of what they're trying to do to stop? Or, you know, I know we're here to help, and you really try to balance this out. I mean, what can she do to?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, we've reached so many, we've crossed so many thresholds in the past few years that a few years ago, it's one of the reasons, like when I do these special group meditations that are more ritual shamanic, like I call it like mage ops, you know, is the word I use, or like spiritual like warrior circles. And so I also do some of them on teleconference. I record them on MP3, and I also make them available for people. And we're doing one coming up next week, because there's a lot of things going on that need to be dealt with that just started a few weeks ago. It's kind of like the dark side has went to plan B to try to slow down and hijack some of our timelines. So we need to really kind of step back a bit and like readjust the train, you know, to focus on the ideal future we want to create, and not be hoodwinked or smacked by these energies. But a few years ago, we started noticing there was other technologies that were literally like beaming, like from certain particle beam weapons that were under the ocean, that were in certain underground bases, where they literally are pulsing energy at different locations down into the earth towards the core to try to disrupt some of the new energies from coming out, to try to make it harder for the energies to circulate, as well as to make it harder for people and Gaia to absorb the new energies as they come in from different parts of the galaxy. So these are things we're working a lot on, like transmuting. And that fact is, it doesn't really take a lot of people. It just takes, you know, people that who are conscious enough to want to intervene, to say that we are stewards. So we have a lot more power, because it's through the idiots on the dark side that are physical that have invited their equivalent dark counterparts that have screwed up so much of the reality. So it requires physical people to do the same on the light side. So as light workers, as magical covens, magical groups, you know, we can call on different positive galactic beings from different star systems, different inner earth guardians, angels, to come together. And we ask them to intervene, that we're asking for their assistance to more directly empower us to intervene, and give them space to intervene on our request, to help ourselves and the earth transcend that challenge. So much can be done. Like, it only takes one candle to light a dark room, you know. So once that ray of the sun pierces the clouds, people know that there's a sun behind the cloud. So, you know, it's not about trying to dissolve the whole cloud. It's make a pinhole, make a whole tiny hole first, then it inspires other people to pick up the slack as well. And this is the same idea. So it's a snowball effect. And if we get out of our own apathy and get out of our own way of, you know, fighting each other, and realize there's a common enemy that's been manipulating all of us, then that we need to really anchor the heart at that point and be like, no, we need to expose this darkness and give it thanks, gratitude, but say, you know, leave, opening up that portal for it to get out. So there has been a lot of success on overriding some of those technologies, because we've seen a lot more energy come up since those points. And what Gaia has shown me in the channelings and workings is that basically in 2019 is a time frame that she's working with to create the space, because there have been different layers, as I started talking about in the beginning. If you look at the core of the earth, there are like these vortexes of energy that are coming out, like Gaia's inner earth chakras. These vortexes are coming out, and they want to connect out to the surface, to actual other locations, not just sacred sites, but other places that can hold energy as well. And so our idea is to visualize, in meditation, visualize a clear, like corkscrew spiral of light, you know, when you meditate, going all the way down to the core of the earth. You know, ask the inner earth guardians and the angels and elementals to fill in that ladder of connection, to fill in that shaft with whatever crystals, colors, geometries are needed to re-sanctify your personal connection to a specific point in the core of the earth that is your unique home, that is your plug-in point. It's like Mother Earth wants us to ask her to help. She's not like some weak, victimized mother. We have to get out of that mentality. That's the old Piscean martyrdom, where people are still caught in like only focusing on her pain and on the pollution that's been done to her, that we forgot that she has the solution. But if we're only focusing on that pollution side, we're not asking her higher self. We're not respecting her in her true form. We're looking at her as a wounded, victimized goddess instead of an empowered, liberated whole mother. That's essential, what I find, to shift out of, because if we don't, then we're just self-creating the lower reality. But because then she can't fully assist us, because we're only seeing her in that lower spectrum. You know, we open up our hearts and see, wait a minute, I want to connect to the higher heart of Mother Earth, to her exalted, divine, queenly Shekinah in the Hebrew self. Like, show me yourself, Mother Earth. Like, it's a whole other ballgame going on now, where you can start seeing, you know, images of her sitting on a throne, and a pure way, but also a circle of thrones around her that represents other goddesses that she helped to speak to us through in different periods of time, different history, different cultures. locally and also non-locally, and then use that idea of that it's a round table of divine empowered mothers that you can journey into, and that those thrones are creating like a circle, together, where each throne is like a point of a crown. So it's like the crown of Gaia is in her heart, and it wants to rise so that it can create a new edifice, a new pillar of light that invites us into her new Eden, her new kingdom. So those spaces are already being formed. It's amazing the work that's going on there. It's just that because it's getting so close to forming, we have this, counterforce that's getting more nastier and more desperate to throw people off of finding that path into her sacred space. So they're literally trying to create like negative grids underground, etherically, energetically, to try to create like a covering. So we have to kind of the same way, think of like a cloud does to the sun, blocking the sun. It's like there are like these energetic shadow grids that we have to kind of push through. And so part of the work is not to like give up there, but actually no, really invite your staff of light, your higher self, different elemental spirits to cut through that static under your feet, underground, so you can access that clear geyser that Mother Earth is wanting you to drink from, that new wellspring. And so this is what's really important, and because it's like the tree of life versus the tree of death. And there's been a lot of distortion, kabbalistically, metaphysically, that certain demonic groups, satanic groups, that I don't want to call them satanic, but certain groups that work with archdemons or negative names, they really try to pollute this tree of life with energies of darkness, negativity, and vices. And there's a recent thing going on that we have to really kind of clear out. And it kind of reminds me a little bit, for anybody that's seen that other TV show, Stranger Things or Stranger Things 2. Have you seen that recent show on Netflix? Yeah, it's quite an interesting show, very, very intense. But it's in a similar manner that I find that so many of these shows, especially in movies like Marvel's making, for example, a lot of these superhero show movies, there's so many seeds of truth about what's going on behind the scenes that are being like soft disclosure in these movies and certain TV shows. I mean, how many TV shows we have now that keep continuing, like Gifted and Humans, all talking about people with powers, DNA opening up and being harassed by the government. I mean, it's like, hello, they're putting it right in front of our face that this is the type of thing that they are actively engaged with suppressing or trying to militarize. And that it's up to us to, take back that, that power. And so, it gets really interesting. And one of the things that we're kind of seeing is that there is this certain one of the negative groups that we've been dealing with more recently, again, has been this like, it's like an octopus alien group, like an octopi ET group. So a lot of times people, especially in conspiracy movement, put too much attention on one group, like the reptilians or the Greys, and they don't talk about the other groups. It's like the Illuminati shuffle game. Only focus on one bloodline, not talk about the other secret bloodlines that are really manipulating everything. So same thing we find, in the conspiracy movement, that there's so much attention on one or two groups, and so for me, I'm always about wanting to investigate who are we not hearing about, who's doing this other shit behind the scenes that we need to know about and intercept. So this octopus group is a really nasty one. It's kind of where the whole Cthulhu mythos originally came from. That old writer, what's his name, who wrote those books in the early part of the century. I can't remember his name. But it's part of the idea of like Leviathan in the Bible, or this idea of the beast of like the Kraken type ocean creature. It's all connected to a similar archetypal energy. And I was so happy when finally Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from Marvel, the TV show, when they finally, last season got into some of the higher level truth, and I was like, there they go. They finally let a piece of disclosure where they had one of the main negative ETs that was part of that worship and cult was this octopi tentacle humanoid dude that appeared. And I was like, yes, they finally giving that group a little bit of press, even if it's through sci-fi. The point is it still makes it awareness for people to understand and question. I was dealing with a group back in 2010, first time through an ex-girlfriend actually that had these things in her body that were horrifying, and they were like those etheric tentacles of the octopus group that were just draining her energy, making her exhausted and like attacking her. And I was like, what the hell is this? First time I dealt with them, I'm like, oh, this is disgusting. What is what are these creepy, etheric octopi beings, And then over the years, I've learned so much more. I've also had massive attacks from them. And we did a lot of work with groups over a few years ago to start to deconstruct their global grid. And a lot of positive beings that were connected to Arcturus, that were part of the Thor and Odin lineage, which actually is really Arcturian. a lot of these higher defender groups have been coming in to intervene, but we are not aware of so much intervention that's happened that saved our ass many times already. But because there's so much going on, it seems like there's not much help, but it's just that, no, there's so much more that has happened that they've intervened on. It's just that it's like the waters are boiling, so it's kind of hard to see behind the clouds there. But we did a lot of work, and this grid was set up since Atlantis. This octopus group had set up this ancient global dark grid, similar to like an Anunnaki type of system, but they had a little as if you had a visualization of like many octopuses with tentacles going out to each other to create like a web structure. And so we were doing a lot of work on helping to tear it apart. But this past year, they've been coming back in smaller groups due to new alliances that they've made. And so it's been and just this week I had a nasty, really horrible attack a few days ago from the action. I was out for half the day, needing to pull them out of my field and doing protection. And I'd worked on a client night before that was in Europe. And she was originally from Australia, and her family, her parents ran a really crazy, like pedophile satanic cult down in Australia that she was victimized with and had done a lot of black magic and stuff, and she escaped out of there. And so when I was doing the Silvertree with her, I saw that this octopus group was actually connected to her family. They were working with it esoterically and offering like kind of like the opposite of the blood of Christ. It was like the blood of Leviathan. They were trying to offer the energy to like this dark beast energy, so it can get really sick and like, nasty, but at the same time, it's like the best sci-fi film that actually is real. When you really start to see like reality is way stranger than any movie has depicted it. But we have a lot more power too, and that's the beautiful part. Otherwise I wouldn't be here talking about it. Because they've tried to take me out so many times with this. Like wow. And I had one friend I worked on years ago, the octopus time frame. He was actually a neurosurgeon, a neuroscience professor at Cornell University, and he came to me a couple years ago. Terrified because he had these octopi entities in his body, but he couldn't talk about it to anybody because he's an internationally renowned scientist. They would think he's crazy. And he told me that he was getting attacked by them and that they were creating a white substance that he was spitting out of his body that wasn't made by the human body, but was from an interface with his nervous system. And it almost gave him kidney failure. And so I worked with him, and he had definitely one of the worst cases. It took 4 sessions plus 1 referral to finally get him free of those entities that were like, they were infested in all parts of his body. But just to give an idea of how this works in a cool way, is that they were connected to him through Atlantis, a past life he had in Atlantis, where he was a genetic engineer, and he was making clone bodies for these aliens to come into form. And so now that he was at the end of the cycle, he was also a neuroscientist, but also he didn't tell me till the 4th session he was doing genetic engineering. I'm like, oh fuck, it's the same like nodal point in your timeline, completing your karma, and now they think that they can use you again, to come in. And I'm like, oh my God, it felt like a movie working with him. And first with these things coming out, I mean, they attacked a day and a half after I first worked on them. I was in so much pain. They were coming at me like all the time. And I was like, get out of here. So you have to use different ritual magic, different things. You can burn them, you can freeze them, you can do chi energy in different ways to kind of like, different power animals that come and bite at them. There are different ways you do like psychic warfare to combat these negative entities. So it's a bit like friends used to call me like Dr. Strange because I'd go through this for so many years, with these things that I see and like to report on. What
do you do when you're sleeping? I mean, it seems like I do a lot of spiritual warrior stuff when I'm sleeping. It's like I'm taking things on and I'm kicking butt and I'm taking ghosts. Nothing scares me anymore.
Wow.
It's just I go at it right away. So I'm kind of curious. What are you doing when you're sleeping?
Exactly. I mean, some of that happens different times as well. I mean, some nights I get rest. Other nights I'm doing work. So it can be half light, half dark in terms of like getting updates and upgrades or helping people out, or things trying to bother me and not, or me spying on other groups doing negative activities. And so I do a lot of like remote viewing and things like that too. That gets into areas. But I mean, it's been a rough past few weeks though, and since the new moon in Scorpio, when I was in Paris and in Prague and doing a new moon ceremony in Prague at a beautiful art studio that was built in an intersection of 2 major ley lines at like really the heart of the vortex of Prague, which is a wonderful magical city. I tell everybody to go there. I mean, the whole city of Prague was built on magic pretty much. People don't really realize that. The original 14th century, king was an alchemist wizard pretty much. And he made a safe haven for all the witches and wizards and alchemists all around Europe to come and build this new city, which was Prague. That the church was rejecting all of them and trying to arrest them. He was welcoming them all together. So the druid community is also getting stronger, getting revised in Prague, and they want to do work to clean out the ley lines to protect the city more on a magical level. Friends of friends are part of the groups over there. So it's nice to see that there are more active groups that are also, trying to pick up the torch of being ley line maintenance workers, because it's us, again, it's about us taking care of our body, but collectively, wherever we're at, trying to take care of our local grid system so that it's flushed out of the negativity and can provide more of to be more of an expression of this new love energy coming out of the earth, so Gaia's new love vines can come out, because, and it's important because there are these negative things that are happening, like, it almost looks like kind of like a tick or a leech, and we were seeing them coming up, but they were huge, like really huge ones that are coming out recently on the ocean in different areas, and it was part of a negative ET agenda where they were trying to do a new plan B to activate this new sabotage mechanism where they would try to hook into ley lines and hijack people's time energy, and so we're working on this now because it's pretty nasty. It's pretty nasty stuff, but it's also connected to another group that's like a negative spider group. That's a negative extraterrestrial. Yeah, really nasty. Yeah. Your expression was good there. Yeah. Yeah, the arachnids are pretty fun. Oh my God, not really, but yeah, they were coming up again recently too, like a breach that we were having to deal with upstate New York on a higher level that we were tracking, and this other arachnoid negative ET group is trying to come in, and it's like a dark web network that these negative ET planets have between each other that they use to try to maintain dominion over worlds, and that becomes part of what we perceive as the Matrix. In a way, is this larger collage of control system grids. The positive ETs have their opposite version of that. It's more like a big love crystal that connects all these ascended worlds that are in heart vibration and above. And so the Earth is going into that, but before she goes into that, she's got to be cleaned out of all the negative webs, these shadow, almost like black gooey like plasma energy lines or filaments that are fueled by these negative ritual groups, that have done sacrifice and have done different things to kind of feed it, in a sense. It's like feeding a beast on a thought form, like egregore level. So, it takes a while for us to clean it out, so we need more people to help with that process. And so we're doing something next, well, it depends when this video airs, but we'll be doing stuff, more regularly to, teleconferencing and calling up to people that feel like this is not like necessarily light work to do, because it can get pretty heavy. But we do get a lot of support when we do it. A lot of angels, a lot of guides, a lot of different ETs come in, because again, all they need is a few people, and then they can come in exponentially with their spaceships, with their higher light craft, to start to beam energy into areas to help kick out the negativity. And they're doing that a lot right now. The Andromedans are coming in. A lot of planets from Andromeda are coming in immensely, and they really want us to invite them in more. I can't express how much help wants to come in from this neighboring galaxy that has been coming up the past couple of years. But as of a few days ago, working with a client in Australia, and so many of these Andromedan light ships wanted to come over and just beam energy in Australia and start to clean out some of the gunk around it. And so it's really, really beautiful. They're really like these knights at a round table on a galactic level, just in terms of their desire to protect the heart and the blossoming of the heart and the blossoming of the goddess energy. It's like perfect divine masculine energy, the complement, So anyway, I'm going on and on.
Spiders reminded me of Starship Troopers. Did you ever see that movie?
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah. They're a little different, but yeah, the idea is similar.
Right, that's a crazy movie. Hey,
Well,
but you said so. Oh, go ahead, Denise.
I was just going to say that was just like that Tom Cruise movie with, what was her name? That English woman. They were warriors, and they kept getting killed, and then they had to figure out how to keep going, and it was like them creepy spider. Oh, it was.
I didn't see that
I
one.
don't remember what it was.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
but you said something earlier, Stephen, again, that piqued my interest. You mentioned clones. What can you tell us? What is the status, the degree of efficiency? How far is there cloning? What is the status of cloning here on our realm right now?
Very good question. Definitely a fun one to answer. Yeah. Yeah. It's wow. Oh yeah. I mean, in terms of the shadow groups or shadow intelligence agencies, different corporations, they've pretty much perfected cloning in way beyond what we'd ever conceive of. But what they're using clones for is pretty fucked up. I assume my language in the video. What they're using clones for is definitely creative in a very high level negative way. And I'll give you the first story. The first time I encountered working with a client that had clones that came up several years ago. And before that, I wasn't sure why I stood on the topic other than research. But when I start seeing it and working on people and you start tracking it and you feel the energy and you're like, oh yeah, this is going on, you know? And then it gets much more realistic later on from physical meetings we've had and confirmations we've had with people in certain intelligence agencies. But anyway, this first story, there's one guy I worked on. I'm not going to say which country, but he's from an Asian country. And he fell within a lineage of like a spin-off royal family of one of the Asian countries. And he was like a certain generation from like the founder of that modern country. So he had a lot of people in his family that were involved in some pretty, you know, interesting stuff, you know, people that had high level positions in some of these corporations and, you know, tentacles of the Illuminati system, let's put it that way, you know, and he was kind of like the black sheep, you know, against all that stuff. And so he was kind of being targeted by a lot of different people. Anyway, I hadn't seen him in a few months. I had a dream of him where I saw one of his clones and I was like, oh, what's going on? I call him up and he goes, oh, Steve, I was doing some soul retrieval and I was doing, you know, I was pulling back some pieces of my energy, but then I realized it felt like they were mine, but at the same time they weren't mine. And then I saw that it was coming from a clone body. I was like, dude, I just saw this, you know, your clone too. I'm like, let's do a session. So I do work on him. I could see one of the clones, we zoom in on it, but it wasn't like active walking around. It was like in stasis, but it was plugged into a lot of technology. And they were using it to kind of pull energy from him into the clone, basically as part of the soul retrieval displacement. So in other words, it's like trying to disperse part of your power through having like, it's basically what they even refer to as like a techno like voodoo doll. It's like technological voodoo, where they literally would use the DNA quantum entanglement of the clone body to attack and draw energy from the main primary person that they had cloned. So it's a really sick kind of usage of it. And so after I tracked that it was Booz Allen Hamilton, that defense contractor that's really huge. They had never really come up on my radar before until I worked on him, and I saw that company was one of the companies that had his clone that was working with it. That company became more famous later with Edward Snowden, because Edward Snowden was part of Booz Allen Hamilton through the CIA, NSA networks, because they're a big contractor for all the intelligence agencies, all the groups in the government hire Booz Allen Hamilton to do a lot of their work. And there was one of the former CIA directors was quoted as saying that the Booz Allen Hamilton is the shadow intelligence community. To give you an idea. So that's fascinating kind of quote that I found online from one of them interviews. And so he freaked out when I mentioned this company because he had a friend that I met once who was working in the FBI, but I didn't realize it was a joint task force with Booz Allen Hamilton. So I was like, dude, call your friend up, ask him, you know, if he knows any information. So he gets on the phone with him. They were talking normal, first chatting. Then he asked him, he goes, oh, do you know anything about cloning going on in your company? His friend gets dead quiet on the phone. And it's like, I can neither confirm nor deny that that's happening in my company. So obviously, whenever anybody says that, that means yes, you know, pretty much, especially from being a close friend of his, you know, that just shut down when he started talking about it. And then maybe a few months later, we get extra confirmation from somebody who is working at a metaphysical store, a smaller metaphysical shop in New York City. That's one of the older ones. And unfortunately, the store was kind of being used by the NSA to track light workers. And I mean, I even got little confirmation from one of the main managers of the store who had a relative that is an NSA agent that was connected with her that would go to the store. And he set up a meeting with my friend and the manager. And I missed the meeting by like 5 minutes, because the long story happened there. But after I got there, she confirmed what he said to her and to Alec, my friend, who went through this stuff. And he basically, the first thing the NSA guy tells my friend is, hey, you know that they have a clone of you and they're using it in techno voodoo style. And I was like, oh my God, even use the same words exactly, you know. So it was crazy confirmation, you know, just in terms of grounding it. But I've seen that happen, you know, time now. Several people now I've worked on. Most of them have had military abductions that have had clones. I'm not finding clones coming up for people in sessions normally, you know, just walking around that are regular clients that have a healing issue. It's mainly people that are being targeted or have had some type of, you know, prior line alien abduction or military abduction.
Well, if it's for control, then to control somebody's behavior, choices, actions, you would think that would be being implemented for people in high positions.
Sure.
People that are going to be making decisions in high places that perhaps they're being voodoo dolled.
Yes, that would say for sure. When you're getting into power structures, yeah, I meant more so when I mentioned people being used military projects, that's more like for clients, but people that are definitely in higher positions of power or Hollywood. I mean, there are other stories of like them having clones of different people in Hollywood that so that they could like, use them as like sex dolls, actively, or use them in like different rituals where they can then manipulate them, remotely, or, it gets more involved. I mean, like really, really sick shit, and think about it.
What makes these people, or I guess, can you even call them people?
Right.
What makes them be so malicious? What is up with that?
It's amazing, isn't it? It
is amazing.
It's so over the top, though. I tell you, like, wow, it's so over the top, and some of these scenarios. And then, I mean, the other part we saw with the clones is that some people I worked on, I've also felt that where they would try to take you out of body and put you in your clone while you're sleeping temporarily, program you through the clone. So when you go back in your body, you have that imprint. Like, really, I'm like, this is such advanced alien technology, as well as, being applied to it. It sounds like such a bad sci-fi movie, but I'm like, wow, this is actually happening, and like helping people with that. And it just shows how far they are gotten in terms of being afraid of people waking up, that they've gone to such exorbitant measures to try to divide people's energies so they're not able to fully awaken to their powers. It's like, wow, way beyond, stuff they do in, like in the Marvel, in terms of going after people, mutants and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, to work on that.
Well, maybe the human technology is their creation. If they're able to manipulate it and recreate it and then animate within and without and all this stuff, maybe it is their creation. Where did human come from?
Well, definitely, there have been many genetic projects that have gone on since early humanity was formed by different ET groups, some positive, some negative. So there's definitely both sides to that have happened, where they've tried to either help humanity evolve or they tried to manipulate it or crossbreed, with negative ET groups. And those are the ones that oftentimes have been the Illuminati bloodlines, have gone back to those Nephilim or Anunnaki or different negative ET groups that have that had cloned certain original DNA, or that came from worlds that established their royalty up there, and they wanted to expand their royalty here, to rule by royal decree because you have the special DNA, as opposed to love DNA. They try to do the opposite, use that bloodline as a carrier for the negative ET, hierarchy of control, and expansion of their power in the local area. That's why a lot of them are obsessed about inbreeding, because it's more about keeping that higher negative DNA overlay information field present, not about, some of the other stuff we think it is, and that's actually one person I knew who was part of a bloodline, spinoff of a bloodline in Europe. He told me, that a lot of these Illuminati families also refer to themselves as like dragon families. It's not just the Asian groups, but that they're different dragon families that they call themselves that, and some of them go back to reptilian interbreeding. But there's different light dragons and positive dragons, even of how they phrase themselves, that might be an interesting segue for her dragon discussion.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's perfect.
Yeah, I got an off the wall question.
Sure.
How many people are walking around that are incarnated dragons?
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't. There was one guy I met in England when I was there. He was actually, you'll love the story. So I actually joined two new friends there. They have they actually live on one of the military bases there, because their spouses are in the military. And one of the guys I met was in the military there. And I went to a meditation group on the base. This was great. I was like, wow, going out to one of the biggest freaking military bases in England, and going to a metaphysical group there. And it was crazy energy going on in that. Oh my God. But the coolest thing is that one of the guys I met, he was one of the few people I've only met a few people that ever claimed that what you're talking about. He was one of them, and said that he was a dragon incarnate from a galactic level, cosmic level and stuff. And I was like, okay. At first I'm like, whatever, I'm not sure, And then I hugged him. We started meditating together, and I feel it. I'm like, whoa! I start zooming in with him, and I shot right away to seeing all these different interplanetary light dragons in our solar system. and different huge ones that I'd never had seen before. And I was seeing his connection to that. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess you're not lying to me. You know, like, you're definitely telling me the truth. Your soul is definitely an interesting stream, because it's really rare that I meet anybody like that.
Yeah. It is.
And he said that he was fighting a lot of the reptilian energies and black dragons that were flying over the base on the astral level. And he was like, so it was a lot of light dragon versus dark dragons in the astral plane that he was involved with on a regular basis. And I was like, that's a great story. You're like, you know, talk about like a guardian dragon on a military base that has nuclear weapons, and you're fighting negative, you know, beings over the base. I'm like, he had come to one of my other events over there, and you know, a lot of these, you know, positive light dragons we work with, you know, are also like the way the Asians talk about, with the dragon lines, which are part of the meridians and the acupuncture lines in the earth. You know, so you have either those that are positive ones that help maintain that network, and then you have the negative groups that have had alliances with off-world negative groups that work with the darker side of it. And I mean, in China, there's a lot of that fighting that was going on a long time. And I mean, several years ago, I had gotten a kind of a higher initiation on the inner planes with one of these light dragon orders. It was like a yellow light dragon order that, and I was really intense stuff going on for a number of years. And the woman I dreamt of that was one of the people initiating me into it, I met her physically a few years later, because she actually ran a certain higher level spiritual Asian organization that blew me away. And I saw her, I started almost like crying, because I was like, oh my God, you were the woman who gave me the initiation. And she repeated the same words she told me in the dream. She started repeating to me when I was in person. And then after I asked her about the dragon stuff, and she goes, yeah, but that's a secret within our organization that we're connected to that. And I was like, okay, I respect that, you know. But it was a great like full circle for me to ground the dream plane initiation to physical reality, you know, and realizing it's all connected, and that these groups, you know, are constantly working through people, you know, both higher masters, higher martial arts teachers, and Taoist Buddhist groups that work with the dragon energy in Asia, you know, and that are connected to powerful bloodlines. Or there's both. There's light dragon groups in Asia, and there's dark ones, you know. So this is the problem, in that they've had a long history of fighting over the pyramids in China, the secret pyramids that are in China. And we did a lot of remote work on several years ago at first, to dealing with some of these pyramid wars. I call it the grid wars that go on between some of the groups to try to control the grid lines that come out of sacred sites, because once they manipulate that, then it's easier for them to control the population. And so there was stuff going on one of the pyramids where we felt Kuan Yin energy. Kuan Yin came in so strong, and some other like Asian goddesses and the yellow dragon, white dragon order from Shambhala, Himalaya mountains, were coming in and fighting the black dragon groups that were trying to contaminate the area. And it was like psychic Mortal Kombat on a higher level, that I was like, you know, flipping out, experiencing it. And it was being pulled out a body lot with these other groups coming in involving that. And then I meet this one Taoist monk years ago, a few years after that, in California, telling him the stories, because he grew up in, you know, with the Shaolin Kung Fu and stuff. And I mentioned to him about the dragons and the, you know, what I picked up on these pyramids. And he said that he visited a few of the pyramids in China, and that he also understood from his teachings that some of the ancient emperors in China made deals with some of the negative dragon or negative reptilian groups, and that this was part of their desire of control, was to control certain pyramids and their name. So they would harness the black dragon to, you know, as part of their deal with the devil, so to speak, you know, to maintain the control, you know, and to try to fight against the light dragon groups that were more about the protecting of the heart and opening of that lotus, you know. So it's a fascinating area. And I mean, I've dealt with some off-world positive groups. There's a group in Arcturus I dealt with that's a positive dragon order. It's called Ceridon. And it's a beautiful, like, interstellar light dragon order that wants to come in to help out as well, to defend us and protect. And it's connected with, it's connected with this positive, like, Nordic, again, I mentioned earlier briefly that a lot of these mythologies we hear about are actually, you know, are actually beings that came from other star systems that seeded that mythology on a given planet. So the whole idea of like Thor and Odin group, they have two planets in Arcturus that's really the real Asgard. So when I first saw the first Thor movie, I got really excited, because when they were showing Asgard on the other planet, me and another friend, because we're both have memories of living in Arcturus as one of our many lifetimes there. So when they started depicting it in the Thor movie, we almost started crying, because it was so close to being accurate in terms of the architecture and style of geometry of one of the cities in Arcturus that was part of the real Asgard. So I was like, go Marvel, you got this one right again in terms of at least a better depiction. Anyway, so there's that order is connected to that group. So that civilization, they have like a blend of like the positive Nordic energies and like the higher Avalon Celtic energies. So you have this like, you know, magical mystery school idea of the planet there, where they have higher teachers and they train people to be like the real Jedi on a magical level, you know, fourth and fifth dimensional level.
And their cities look like Rivendell.
So yes, you would definitely have other ones like that are so gorgeous. Yeah, amazing. So anyway.
Yeah, well, you know, I think the phoenix and the dragon, there's a correlation there. I think that the phoenix, you know, and there's a connection to Lemuria and Agartha too with that. And
Phoenix, I mean, I have to show you, if I move my camera towards the room later, I mean, that big Phoenix poster on my room, also on my Facebook site.
Yeah.
Phoenix is the first one I ever worked, main one I work with is like, for me, expression of who I am as a soul being. When I remembered my higher connection to the sun and higher lifetimes as an energy being living on what we call stars, are actually way beyond what we perceive on a physical level. And the Phoenix and the sunbird is a very real energetic being that we only see a pale version of it in our dimension. But it's definitely a really powerful metaphysical, multidimensional vehicle, an animal spirit that other higher beings use to embody that expression of the death and resurrection in a whole different level. And it's unfortunate that there's also been a misuse of that archetype too. We've had the Black Phoenix in Egypt and the Black Sun orders. There have been like, this gets into a longer story of just, again, how they try to distort all the power light symbols to the negative side. But the Phoenix has been always one of my main symbols. And a lifetime that I remember working during the Merlin times, where I was one of his 12 druid priests, and his counterpart, high priestess of Avalon, had 12 female priestesses that were doing ritual and ceremony. We would gather a certain number of times a year together to do combined rituals in different stone circles. And when I went back to England, and I went to Ireland first and Scotland many years ago, and then England a few years ago, I was like recovering some of those lines of energy and points we did ritual at to reactivate some of these thought forms that we grounded there from ancient times to help clean out shit that had infested it between now and then. So there's a lot of this higher crossover of like, you know, astral time war in a sense that goes on between positive groups that did work in one area versus negative groups and their desire to manipulate events at further points in the future. You know, it gets very complicated sometimes. But so the idea here is that the male group was working with the dragon energies, and the female group of the priests of Avalon, they were working with the unicorn energies. And so there was this alignment of the unicorn and the dragon, and then a higher Phoenix energy would come in as a higher guardian aspect of it as well in the fusion, you know. And so those three symbols that you work with and you discuss in your books has been a prime for me, you know, my journey. So it's beautiful. And there were the first activations I was doing in England just a couple years ago. Before I went there, I was doing some of the guides told me that, well, we were working on a bigger kind of a global grid system project, which has to do with the hypercube. The hypercube is a fourth dimensional cube, or a tesseract, they call it, that has 16 points. Like a normal cube has 8 points, right? A 4D cube has 16 points. And part of the shift that's happening in the Earth is that she's opening up her new hypercube light body, where there are these new pillars of light that literally are marking out these 16 new points that are the scaffolding, in a sense, of her new positive matrix. So there's been a lot of fighting already going on about these points, because they're like ports of harbor for a lot of interdimensional beings and higher ones that come in and out, and they affect our relationship to time, because the hypercube is like the same way that like a triangular prism makes a white light into a rainbow. A hypercube does that for time. A hypercube is like a nexus point for many timelines to cross through, like weaving thread through the eye of like multiple strands of thread through the eye of a needle. That structure is a very powerful geometry for bridging timelines. So it makes a big interest for a lot of groups. And the point is that we were doing an activation in England to activate, because one of the points of the 16-point grid is in England, on the border between England and Wales, technically, at a site that I first remote viewed. I didn't know what was there. I just saw like X marks a spot on the map. And I was working with a client in England on Skype, and I saw it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the point we have to go activate. I'm like, I have no idea what's there. We have to do research. Ends up being that it was the only site in all of England where there was natural quartzite rock that came out of the ground in these big columns, and like, it looked like a playground for the giants. And like so many people I met in England didn't even hear about the place. It's called Stipper Stones. It's amazing. So before we got to that spot, we had to activate many other points to like start to as a supportive structure for that. And the guides told me before I went there, my Arcturian guides originally said, pay attention to the crop circles. They said, we're going to form some crop circles for you guys there. They're going to match up with the work, And I was like, oh, that sounds really exciting. Let's see. So I was telling the first group there, we got to pay attention. So literally first day we did the first ceremony where we're visualizing a hypercube, a cube within a cube, and around us in the chakras. We're doing it seeing around England. The next day, a crop circle forms of a cube with a sphere in the middle of it. We were like, oh, here we go. And the main guardian of this hypercube network was a phoenix. And all these phoenixes were appearing on a higher level over England. And we're like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. 3 days later, a phoenix crop circle forms. First time. Huge one in Avebury with a cube as a head. And we were like, oh my God. And that was the point we were going to. Anyway, in our journey to activate next was Avebury. And so it was like, it just welcomed us, and the farmer was letting everybody in there, and had the big sun disk crown, cube head with a Native American sunbird motif. That makes it full circles. The very first grid work I ever did with a group was in 1997 in the Cahokia Indian Mounds in Illinois. Sacred Indian Mounds that are half an hour from St. Louis. And it was a whole city dedicated to the sun. And they had the sunbird. They had the phoenix as their main symbol there. And we were channeling that group of beings the first time when I went there. It was why I went there to begin with. I received energy from these native beings that came in. And so the first group work I did was about phoenix mounds, phoenix eggs, phoenix energies opening up on the earth. And then 20 years later, this circle forms in England that has a Native American motif similar to the Indians that we activated in the beginning, the Cahokia Indians. So it was literally full circle, and I felt them. When we got into the circle, I could feel so many of those native sunbird indigenous spirits come in. I'm saying, wow, I didn't expect to feel you guys in England. But they were so strong there. And we have like some photographs on Facebook of inside the circle. And when we first get there, hundreds of birds come out just before we got there, and we're flying in a circle over the entrance to the crop circle for hours, few hours. It wouldn't stop spinning in circles, flying in circles. And I'm like, how perfect is that? Hundreds of birds over a bird crop circle, So that's where the adventure gets fun and very grounding. Because you're like, yeah, this stuff is real. My other friends were like, who didn't know me, they're like, oh, like, I'm like, I wasn't talking out of my ass. I mean, I'm channeling these beings. Like, this is real. Like, they're making crop circles. We're doing real work here. We got to keep this up, So, but it's cute and it's grounding in the sense of like just confirmations for people. Like, yeah, like we're being heard. This is like, this is not just us making this stuff up. Like the realm between fantasy and imagination and reality is so much more real than people imagine if they let themselves kind of take the leap, understanding that sometimes people think they're only in their imagination when it's just like, I make the analogy of saying that it's like the difference between having a computer where you're just looking at your own files and then you hook up to the internet. Well, you're still using your computer to explore the internet, but you're not, all that information is not stored on your personal computer. It's in a server somewhere else in the cloud. Yeah. It's the same thing. It's the same thing when you're using your imagination as a bridge, like an interface protocol to the internet. You're using a server, using a program to surf the internet, a browser. It's the same way, creating an environment in your astral temple and your journey space where you can then network to the actual inner planes or higher mind where other beings are doing the same thing. It's like the real virtual reality that they would love to create, that exists naturally. And if these,
it's like Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. I mean, after Peter Jackson got through with it, so many people were like, they lived that. And I would watch it and I would cry through every one of them. I'd have to watch it by myself because what are you crying for? And it's like, I lived that life.
Oh my God. Right? Exactly. They don't understand until you realize it's like, no, these are, they're with this reason. This is a much bigger reality. These forces intertwine with us.
They sure do. They sure do. So
what's the time check? I want to get grounded too. What are we doing here? Yeah,
we probably were. This is probably a good place to start wrapping up here. So.
Okay. I wasn't sure yet.
Yeah. What are you going to do, Zach?
What just happened?
You got,
There you go. I thought I'd bring up, this is a site of yours, Stephen.
I even forgot that site is even still up. That's like my old school website. The new website, which was Time Star Productions, but that's actually down right now because of drama I've had with the with the Wix people. but it'll hopefully be up soon. But I can, yeah, people want to contact, yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look up my name on, yeah, definitely that email. That email is the valid email. You can email me through there, or if you're on Facebook too. I'm reaching close to my limit, so people should friend me soon if they want to friend me. But there's plenty of other interviews that I've done that even on my note section on Facebook, I have some of them. But the website's got the more complete list, so I have to send it to people. People email me, I can send them a more complete list of other interviews that are relevant to look at. And also just Google my name. I mean, if they YouTube my name or Google my name, they'll find up some other information. The session work I do a lot of sessions, not just in person, but on the phone or other countries on, Facebook Messenger or on Signal Messenger app or different apps like that. And then I also sometimes teleconference the group new moon, full moon meditations we do, because there are a lot of new codings that are coming in and transmissions that I channel each month that are relevant for us to tap into. And I just ask for like donation basis, people, donate something for PayPal for me to listen in or get the MP3 of it and make the MP3s available so people can listen to it on their own time and ground more of the techniques. So, we try to keep people with some updated stuff as much as we can about it,
And your sessions again?
Sessions are, they're like guided channel journeys. So basically I'll lead the person through what looks like a guided meditation process, but it's way beyond that. In the beginning, I call on different archangels or different directions and check in to see what they need from each direction. Kind of like feng shui for the aura, a bit like an auric tune-up to help the person, redecorate their inner astral temple so that they can get updated, apps installed to make it easier for them to tune in to whatever they need to. So basic idea is to help them receive what they need for the next step. So some people in a session will get past life information, past life integration, but other people may get connections to, their spirit teams from other planets, their home worlds, or other orders they belong to that want to come back and help reinitiate them into those lineages. Other ones will get upgrades from Gaia, from other beings, or like auric cleansing. So it really depends where the person's at, at that point in their journey. And some people I work with regularly, and we get much deeper depending upon what issues they're dealing with. So it definitely keeps me active, keeps it interesting for sure. Especially being a bigger service work, we can start intercepting some of these storylines. For example, sometimes the people I might work with may have had negative incarnations, right, in a certain group or a certain time, and and then we're able to hack into that network better, because then we can use it as a Trojan horse to bring light back into those darker sectors. So I've had a bunch of clients that were positive and as star people, but they've had negative ET lifetimes, like in some of these really high level dark organizations. And so when we start working together, we're able to hack into their system and understand more how we can deconstruct some of those thought forms that the negative groups use to keep their system in play. We can help, burn through it with more of that understanding, So it's cool. It's a bit of like, like our light spiritual warfare,
Yeah, very nice.
Very cool. Anyway, it's great talking to you guys, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed you coming on today. Thank you, Stephen.
You're definitely another wizard gnome energy you have there too. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have to have you come back.
I know it was a lot. I said a lot today, though. I was
yeah, you were patched into that hard drive, and it was just like, yeah.
Trying to give you some pieces of all these different areas, kind of like a buffet.
Well, we know how to get in contact with you, and I'm really interested in your meditations, your group meditations.
Yes.
Do them like Zoom or something like this. I can.
Yeah, right. I definitely I should do something with Zoom at some point with that too.
Yeah.
Right now there's more people calling in with the phone for it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Also, because some of in the warm weather, I do them outside, so like it's harder to kind of keep the nighttime. It's not always as clear for like video.
Right.
Easier for the phone at that point, but indoor ones maybe.
Yeah. So, well, great.
Thank you, dear.
Yes, it was fun. We even got to talk a little bit about dragons.
Yes, we're going to go more into it next time.
I'm always waiting for somebody to talk about dragons.
Next time we can go bigger into the Camelot storyline as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. All that stuff. Merlin, all of that. Just love it. So anyways.
So many of us are reincarnated from back then, so it's piecing together the story and also helping to rewrite what needs to be healed from that time frame that was interfered with. You know,
Yes.
we're kind of bringing it back online. But,
well, a lot of us have been burned at the stake, and you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
So many horrors. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyways, but okay. Well, good. Wonderful. Thank you for
Yes.
coming on, Stephen. We just
Thank
totally enjoyed it, and we
Thank
got
God.
it back. And keep doing your good works.
Yeah, thank you.
More like you.
All right.
So, all
Likewise.
right.